Hey, Ramon.
Hey Greg, you're early. So is Michelle. There you go. How's it going, man?
It's a weird time still, but I've still got some job prospects that uh, I'm hopefully pretty close with. I know I'm in the final rounds with one thing, uh, a copywriter gig actually. Um, so we'll see. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I mean, part of me is enjoying the lockdown because I can get a lot of things done, but I'm also tired of it.
Uh, yeah.
You know how that is, I'm sure.
By the way, I accidentally hit share screen. I don't know if you got a notification. I am not trying to share my screen. So if you see something about that, just ignore it.
Okay. Hi, Jonah.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey.
Who is NHIYC?
It's me, Raymond. We spoke briefly on the phone.
Oh, that's right. This is Nee, right?
Yeah. Hey.
Welcome.
Thank you.
We're just gonna wait for our guest of honor, who happens to be Greg's boss. You're still working for the Bee, right?
Yeah. It's a freelance thing, but Heidi is definitely the closest thing that I have to a boss right now. But yeah, I've got a interview with Tim Seeley coming up. Hopefully that'll be ready later this week about his. He's the editor in chief of Heavy Metal now.
Oh,
so
really?
We talked about
Okay.
yeah. Heavy Metal 300 is coming out, and I believe that's his first issue as editor in chief, having taken over for Grant Morrison of all people. So we talked about that. I've also. Are you familiar with the writer Ram V?
No.
Okay, he wrote a really great graphic novel called Graffiti's Wall.
Hold on,
It's
Greg.
about...
At 7:30, I'm gonna welcome everybody.
Oh yeah.
Hey, everybody. Oh, you know what? Oh, it's recording good. I want to welcome everybody to Comic Arts Workshop. While we're waiting for Heidi, I'm going to talk a little bit about the workshop. We started back in 2017. I think Greg was there. Were you there first time? No, Jonah was.
It was August of 2017.
And we've been going almost every month since then. So with some kind of an event, usually with a guest speaker, but sometimes it's just us getting together, but usually with a guest speaker. We've had Neil Adams, we've had Fabrice Sapolsky, we've had Heather Antos, we've had Gina Gagliano, we've had David Saylor, compliments of Jonah. We had a lot of really distinguished guests, and I feel bad that it took this long to get Heather here because Heather's been one of our supporters from the very beginning, but I wanted to save her for something special. Hi Jen, hi Josh, Rick, everybody.
Hello, how's it going?
Going okay. Let's see, what else? I'm sure you guys have seen the next event already is July 7th, which is JD Rosario, who self-publishes Unstoppable Comics, and he just cranks them out, and I figured he'd be a good guy to talk about self-publishing. And he's got a whole philosophy behind it that he's told me about, and I'm sure he'll share with you guys. So, and I guess, yeah, so let's see, is Heidi here? Not yet. Okay. Oh, there she is, she's coming. How's everybody doing with a lockdown? In theory, it's almost over, but we don't know. It might go back up again.
It's a blast.
I'm getting more writing done than usual.
Yeah, me too. I'm getting more done than usual also. So let's see. After the talk, if anybody wants to hang out and just shoot the breeze on Zoom, that'd be great. A big part of our events has always been networking, and it's kind of hard with Zoom. With doing it online, but we try. So after the talk, if people want to just hang out and especially some of the new people, new faces, we'd love to hear more about you, what you guys are doing. So now we have Heidi, and she's joining us.
Sorry, meeting a chip. I
Oh,
haven't
there
had
she
time
is.
for all
Nice
day.
background.
The day has been insane. So this is my dinner right now. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I have my dinner right here.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, Heidi has been one of our supporters from the very beginning. She's come to our events. And like I said before, I feel kind of bad that it's taken this long to bring her in as a guest. But I was always saving her for something that's really, really good. And one of the things that has, especially now that, with the COVID and the DC announcement and all that stuff, I've been really thinking about, well, how sustainable is it really to be a comic book, creator, at least a full-time comic book creator? And I was always wary about asking other creators about it because I didn't want to pry too much into their personal life. People might not want to share whether or not they're able to do this full-time or whether or not they're able to, to survive off a completely just a comic book income. And so I figured, you know what? Heidi knows all these people. She'd be a great person to ask, and she could just, not say names or change the names and, I'm hoping that that's okay with Heidi. So me asking her instead of me putting her in the spot, instead of all the other creators that that normally I would want to ask these questions.
Well, people are saying that, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so without further ado, I'd like to introduce Heidi MacDonald, who is is your title editor-in-chief or publisher?
Editor-in-chief, yes.
Editor-in-chief of The Beat. But she has a pretty long history before The Beat. And I will let her talk about that, which is our first question. And before we do that, if you could please give her a nice round of applause. Even if you're muted, you can show your...
Oh, thank you, Ramon.
Okay, so the first question, could you please tell us about what you do now and what career path led you here?
Okay, so that's a long, winding road. Can everyone hear me? Can you hear me all right, by the way? I'm on my iPad, so my iPad Pro. So hopefully you can hear me okay.
You sound pretty.
Okay, thank you. So I started out in life as I always wanted to be a writer. That was always my goal in life when I was a tiny little girl. And so I moved to Hollywood to pursue my life as a writer. But I began to write for fanzines, like the Comics Journal, the Buyers. They were print then, and so I was writing for those back in the day, back in the 80s and the 90s, before probably some of you were born. And because of that, like writing about comics is actually a really great pathway to getting into comics as an editor, if that's the kind of thing you want to pursue. And so I caught the eye of, I was working in magazine publishing. I had a really strong background in magazine publishing, so I knew a lot about the business. I knew about advertising. I knew all about different aspects of that, publishing. So I got a job as an assistant editor at Disney Adventures magazine, which is a magazine that a lot of 90s kids remember and loved, or at least tolerated and read, or they got a subscription to. So anyway, it was a digest size magazine. Should have bought one to talk about, but in case you haven't seen it. But anyway, I was an assistant editor for the comics section to Marv Wolfman, who's a fairly legendary person in the comics business. So I was his assistant for a while. Then we moved to New York. Then I got a job editing the kids comics for DC Comics, and then I got a job editing Vertigo comics for DC Comics, and then that ended. You know, it wasn't quite the best fit for me there, so I went back to my first love of writing about comics, and founded a site called The Beat, which was a blog then. I mean, it's still kind of a blog, but it's a website about comics related media, which could be a whole big giant site all itself. You know, we cover toys, we cover conventions when there are conventions. So we just cover whatever there is. And I write for the site pretty much every day also. But, you know, I have a staff now, and I run the staff. That's the editor-in-chief. But yeah, I've pretty much seen it all, done it all, been it all. You know, I've done a lot of different things. I've seen a lot of different things along the way.
Unmute yourself.
Heidi, didn't you do a gig at Disney or something like that?
Yeah, I was at Disney Adventures. Yeah, Disney
Oh,
Adventures, which is published by. They had a brief foray into publishing magazines. They discovered Disney Adventures, Family Fun, and some other shitty magazines. Crappy magazines. Anyway, no, whatever. It didn't last too long. I mean, Disney Adventures lasted a long time. Actually, it lasted longer than any of the other magazines. It lasted well into the 2000s. I'm pretty sure.
Cool. Anyways, next question. Being a comic journalist, you must know a lot of professional creators. Can you describe, now this is where we get into the nitty gritty. Can you describe the average socio-economic lifestyle of a typical creator working in the industry full time?
So that's a great question. It's an interesting question. I mean, I don't think you can generalize. I mean, I love indie comics. I love all different kinds of comics, graphic novels. I mean, you know, you have Raina Telgemeier, who started as just a student at SVA and, you know, interning for other cartoonists. And now, you know, she's a millionaire. So I'm sure, I haven't seen her house. I'm sure it's quite nice. Although she lives in the Bay Area. So who knows, you know, $1 million just gets you a closet there. I mean, I think now with graphic novel publishing, so everything I'm going to say is like pre-COVID. So then I'm going to give you a COVID asterisk, okay? Because we really don't know. There's undoubtedly going to be huge, enormous changes in the comics industry and in all industries over the next year to 2 years. You know, we're not going to be back to normal. It's going to be a new normal. So everything I'm talking about is pre-COVID, but some of it's going to make it through. So just before, you know, we really had hit this new plateau just as COVID hit. So, you know, people were getting book deals left, right, and center. There was not uncommon for people to get 6-figure book deals for graphic novels. First-time authors to get 6-figure book deals, which sounds like a lot of money, but, you know, it takes you a year or two to make a graphic novel. So it's not that enormous. However, I would say there was more, you know, there was definitely people getting better deals via, you know, book agents and selling lots of copies too. I mean, Dogman by Dave Pilkey was the biggest, you know, one of the biggest selling books of 2019. He had like 2 books on the best-selling list. They sold, like, all told, those books sold 6 million copies. As I always say, this is a number that all publishers pay attention to. Like, when you sell this many copies, you're in, you know, Danielle Steele or, you know, Stephen King territory. You're a best-selling author. So people are looking to get in on that best-selling author and look for the next Dave Pilkey. So, you know, my friend John Green, who used to be my assistant at Disney Adventures, he just has a New York bestseller. And now I'm going to forget. Oh, it's called Investigators. It's about alligators who are detectives. So, and it's a bestseller. I think it's his 2nd book. But, you know, I mean, that is, I'm sure he makes more money now than he did when he was my assistant. I know what I paid him when he was my assistant. I hope he makes more than that. But, so it's hard to generalize. I would say most comics creators have a fairly middle class existence still. And most of them, I know you have a question that talks about this, but a lot of them have a spouse who works or are single. Like, if you have a family, you probably have a spouse, not necessarily, But if you have a spouse who works, it makes it a lot easier, who has a full-time job.
Sort of answered my next question. What percentage of creators do you estimate are able to support themselves solely on comic book work? I know that's a hard question to ask.
And I was thinking about that, and I put my mind to it, and I would say, I'm just going to make a very rough estimate, and I'd say if you see a Marvel book, like almost all the Marvel and DC books, almost all the artists that you see on there probably do that for a living, because it's pretty time consuming to draw comics pages, and they get paid better than a lot of other, they get a fairly decent page rate. There's been a lot of talk about page rates. I think it was like publishing paid me, comics paid me hashtag on Twitter. I encourage you to seek that out. I haven't even had time. Things are so crazy, but there's a lot of numbers being thrown around.
What's the hashtag?
The hashtag comics paid me, or publishers paid me. Okay. I've been talking a lot about the numbers. But anyway, artists do make more per page than writers do. And this apparently touched off some sort of artist versus writers thing that I missed because I was busy that day. But as far as writers go, I mean, if you write one book a month, you might not make a living, especially if you live in a city like New York or Los Angeles. If you write, 2 or 3 books a month, you probably are making a living at it. So I would guess that probably, like Marvel and DC books, probably 50% of the writers in there make a living at it. It's a rough back of the envelope. It might be 40, 60, 60, 40. But I don't think all of them, I mean, some of them have other gigs, like writing TV shows. And among Image Comics and smaller publishers, I think it's far fewer than that. I think maybe at Image, if you're Ed Brubaker or, Brian K. Vaughan, yeah. But they have other gigs as well. So, and I having looked at questions, diversify. So that's one of my mantras that you might hear me talk about here.
That's a great segue into my next question. What kind of jobs do you see creators doing to supplement their income aside from comics?
So I think in my career in comics, like in the olden days, if you said you worked in comics, that was kind of like a badge of shame, like a red letter, the scarlet letter. And it was a lot harder to get other kinds of freelance jobs or be considered for freelance jobs. But now if you work in comics, it's kind of like, that's really cool. It's creative. You are, comics are a lot more respected now than they were we'll say even 20 years ago, 30 years ago, absolutely. 40 years ago, hell yeah. So, I mean, it's just been upward and upward. So now it's a very respected profession. If you work in comics, only people would make fun of anything are going to make fun of you. So what are some of the other jobs? So for artists, it's always easier. We were talking, since COVID started, there's been a lot of concern about, comic shops, whether they're going to stay open. And I think on Twitter, somebody had a poll that asked, who's in more danger, comic shops or comics creators. I was like, comic shops, because you own a store. And if the store isn't there, there are always other things that you can do. But if you're an artist, there's a lot more things you can do. Well, I don't know. That is kind of subjective. I mean, I think if you're an artist and you're a really good artist, the world's going to be knocking at your door, basically. But I mean, there's so many things. I'll say animation is obviously one that a lot of people in comics have shifted into, doing storyboards, doing character designs, backgrounds, all these things. Very similar skill set, very similar sensibilities, especially if you have a more indie comic style. But video games also, but doing the same kind of thing, character designs, animation, backgrounds, painting, that sort of thing. I mean, doing covers for books, covers for video games, covers, album covers, that kind of thing. Illustration is really a profession that has really withered away, unfortunately. It used to be you could make, really good money well into 6 figures a year doing illustration, but that the market just doesn't exist anymore because of magazine publishing having gone away. But there's editorial cartooning, and there's if you know how to draw, there's always little piecework that you can get, or at least try to get, of doing logos and doing design and doing that kind of thing. I mean, people need art every day, everywhere in the world. So there's always, jobs that are into that. But I would say animation, storyboarding, and video games are probably the most kind of lucrative adjacent fields that you can get into. And yeah. And so, as for writing, I mean, people need writers also, but I gotta be honest, it's a lot easier to write than it is to draw. I mean, it takes real talent to be able to draw. Like, in school, they teach everybody to put together a sentence. And, by the end of going to school, you should be able to write a short essay about something, which in theory is all the skills you need to be a writer. Whereas they don't teach you to draw something that will be, projected on the wall. So, or to, maybe you could play the little tune on the flute, but, it's not like you're going to join the symphony orchestra. So I think writing is a little bit easier. I mean, it's a lot harder it's a lot more competitive for writing. I mean, you have to be, I think, higher up the chart. I'm sure in Ramon's class, you've heard this a million times. The 3 things you need to get work. You got to be always good, always on time, or a hell of a guy. It's outmoded. It should be well liked, easy to work with, a pleasure to work with. If you're 2 of those 3 things, you'll always get work. If you're 1 of those things, you'll get some work. If you get 2 of those, you're 3, you're going to be in demand and turning down work. So, I mean, I think as a writer, it's very, very competitive, and you need to, you got to hustle. You got to really hustle. And breaking into comics writing is really, really hard. I would say it's harder to break into comics writing than it is even TV writing in a lot of ways. It's harder and yet easier. Like, anyone can write a comic. Anyone can go out there and make a mini comic, or, hire an artist, make a comic, sell it at Comic-Cons. Like, if they want to pay for it themselves, anyone can call themselves a comics writer. If they actually get paid to do it, or to be, at a major publisher like an Image, Dark Horse, or the smaller boutique publishers that are very prestigious, like Vault or Black Mask, Aftershock, it's very hard to get in there. It's a much more difficult path. Whereas with art, it's like, people look at your portfolio and see whether you got the chops or not very quickly. So.
I know I've met a lot of comic creators in the last couple of years. Some of them are constantly getting work, and you're right, they are very nice people usually. Some people get work sporadically, and I've met a lot of people also who got one job once and they haven't gotten anything again for years. So it seems like staying in is as hard or harder than getting in.
Yeah.
Can you describe a typical career path for somebody who first breaks in?
Yeah, so, I mean, again, for artists, I think it very much is, breaking in is publishing, cooperative, self-publishing, webcomics, anthologies. Anthology is an incredibly popular and effective way to get your stuff out there. I'm sure you've all had experience with anthologies. So, you say you do a story, for an anthology, you get your name out there, people see it, they're like, oh, that artist is good. You got a network. I mean, that's it. If you're sitting at home waiting for the world to be to pass your door, that is not going to happen. But luckily, you can network now on Twitter. People, they have often hashtags, for specific, women artists, Black artists, queer artists, and these hashtags come out. You show your stuff. They get passed around quite a bit. I know people have gotten a lot of exposure from them. So that's another really great way to participate in these kind of days that are for exposure. But, I mean, I think you could start there, and then like the ultimate, in my mind, would be somebody like Mark Mike Mignola, let's say. I mean, I think it's hard to argue with the fact that Mike Mignola has had a very successful career, and he doesn't even need to work really anymore. I see people are asking questions. I assume that, I mean, I don't know whether to jump in on answering them now or wait to the end. We can, people have comments. I want to address those though.
Either way, it's fine. If you want to address them now, if you see the questions, you want to address them now, that's fine. If you want to save it for the end, it's fine too. If
I'm
you see
gonna look
something that
at-
jumps out at you, go ahead.
Yeah, so I see that somebody asked, are we talking mainstream comics, indie comics, or both? I think we're talking both, because I was going to say, Mike Mignola does both, but he really wants to do his own thing. I think the way comics work is you start out in indie comics, you get to the big two where you get paid to do it, and then you go back to indie comics where you make a lot of money off of your own creations. I mean, that's Ed Brubaker, even Robert Kirkman to some extent, Mignola also. Mike Mignola, we lost Denny O'Neil the other day, and he tweeted about how Denny gave him his first job at Marvel, which was like inking some backgrounds. And, a tiny little job for a man of Mignola's talent. And then he was doing like little faces for Marvel Handbook, guidebook to the Marvel Universe. And then I think he got like an Elric book. So, and it's like more and more people saw his stuff and could see his talent. And then an opportunity came to create Hellboy. Now, is everybody going to create a Hellboy? It's really hard to launch a character like that anymore who really catches on like Hellboy does. But, Mignola expanded the Hellboy universe with the BPRD books, brought on other people to draw it. Like he kept, he created his own universe for that. And obviously he had the support of a publisher like Dark Horse that was able to do it. So, he had a very supportive publisher and a very good deal, obviously, he got, whatever his ownership creative deal with this was, the kind of participation that when the movies came along, he sold lots of books, and that was very lucrative, as well it should be. So, I think the Mike Mignola is he's a tremendous talent. He's like a one-of-a-kind talent. Like maybe you are a tremendous one-of-a-kind talent as well. We all like to think we are, but some of us know we're not quite at Mike Mignola's level. So, I think drawing a monthly book for Marvel, DC, or for Image, where you get a page rate that you could live on, is probably the ultimate. And you can do it at Image. It's a little bit harder now. Now this is a post-COVID thing, because right now the comics distribution system is so messed up. So if you're working for Image, you're not getting your page rate, and Marvel and DC are still paying their page rates. So because they have more backing, they're owned by AT&T and Disney. So the Image dream, but I think that's most people's in comics absolute dream, is to have an Image book where they participate from day one in the profits. So, I think that's a very attractive model. And for writers, so breaking into comics as a writer is harder, as I say, but once you get the rub, it's almost easier, because it's hard to write comics. And, people who come in from outside, even writing, screenwriters come in, it's not just like falling off a log, it's like there's people who are really great at it. And you know what, most of the more recent, I'll say more recent, actually, there's been a new generation, but, a lot of people, like I've mentioned Ed Brubaker quite a few times, and Brian Bendis, they both started out as cartoonists. So they already had a background in how comics worked, and that's what really made their work very effective. But I think once you get like the rub a little bit, where people start talking about your work, and it's getting noticed, I think as a writer, it's a lot easier to get more jobs, because that comes in with the always on time, really nice to work with, always good. Like if you're an editor or a publisher who has money to spend to create a comic, you want someone who is going to be reliable and, is fun to work with. So you're going to say, oh, I heard, James Tynion, like I read his Batman stuff that he was doing. That was really good. Like maybe I'll see if he wants to do a book for me at Boom. I know Boom has a lot of controversy right now about their page rates being very low. But however, they have, the stories are all over the place. I wouldn't say definitely don't work with Boom or definitely go seek out Boom. I mean, I think that's kind of like you need to inform yourself about what the page rates are. But they have absolutely offered a lot of opportunities to writers, and given their books good exposure. But yeah, I think once your name gets out there, like Kieran Gillen. I mean, here's a guy who struggled for a long time just writing about comics. He was another comics journalist, and he did his image book Phonogram with Jamie McKelvey that nobody paid much attention to, and then they went and did some, but they caught the eye of somebody at Marvel, Young Avengers, and then they came back to Image and said we want to do The Wicked and the Vine, and then that book blew up. So it's like it just takes. And now Kieran Gillen is, it's like, who is Kieran Gillen? Get me Kieran Gillen. Get me a Kieran Gillen and then get me a young Kieran Gillen. That's the saddest the life cycle of how that works. But yeah, I think as a writer, it's just really about establishing a reputation. Again, with art, people look at it and see whether they like it or not. But with writing, it's really about your reputation.
I'm going to ask a question that I didn't submit to you earlier because brought up by what you were talking about.
Curveball.
You talked about how you start independent and then you go to Marvel or DC and you go back to independent where you have more control and hopefully make more money, right? It's always been, I've always known that working for the big two or the big five is almost like a rite of passage or a proving ground for yourself. With the state of the industry today, I mean, I don't even know if I have a question in there. It just worries me that if the top five stop producing, it's going to be harder to make a name for yourself in comics, whether you're self-publishing or working for one of the more traditional publishers, it seems.
So, we've seen during quarantine and lockdown, when it first started, we actually saw a surge in sales of books for children because, parents were trapped at home with their kids and were desperate to find anything to keep them amused. So the books, puzzle books, coloring books, graphic novels, the sales jumped up on that when you could get them on Amazon. And then we've seen all these disruptions in the supply chain of periodical comics to comic shops. And of course, comic shops being closed. I mean, Amazon as a monopoly, or the only thing you can get something from is just as problematic. But the reality is that during the lockdown, parents wanted stuff for their kids, and they ordered it on Amazon, or through Barnes and Noble, I'm sure, also, or perhaps from actually local bookstores. Something came up called bookshop.org. I can probably talk about that a little bit later. But so. Yeah, looking at the asterisk of post-COVID, I mean, I was just talking to a retailer. It's been a very busy day. I told everyone to call me on Tuesday, so my phone has literally been ringing off the hook. That's why I've been eating. I haven't even had my dinner yet, but just snacking on some chips. But anyway, talking to a retailer, and we're not going to see the same comics industry in a year. Wonderful comics industry that I was actually pretty happy with, just February 1st. That's not going to come back in the same shape or form. We're going to lose a lot of shops. We're already losing stores. We're seeing the change in the distribution. I think that the bookstore market is a lot more stable, actually. And, the things that I'm talking about, writer-artist, if you're also a writer-artist, you put together your pitch, you get an agent. The way to do books in the book market, mostly for young readers or middle grade, YA, and even younger readers, but for kids, really, is the traditional way of finding an agent. And what I understand, if you go in, to find an agent, you need to have your project put together but not completed. Necessarily, right? You need to have a very strong outline. You need to have samples of art, Now, sometimes you go in as a complete team, but some people don't want to represent. They want to just sell the script, and they take it to a publisher, and the publisher finds the artist. So it's kind of a little bit different there. So I think as a writer, for graphic novels, in the book market, going in with your concepts and getting an agent is the way to go. But now we're jumping through more hoops. Now we have more gatekeepers. But once you get the gate open, there's a bigger pot of gold. So I think are we gonna? Some people are saying we're already out of the recession. I'm like, what world are you living in? Are you fucking? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be swearing. Are you damn crazy? Are you freaking crazy? It's like we don't know where the economy is going to go. Europe is coming out of it a little bit. China seems to be doing okay. That's great. They wear masks. In America, we don't. So we're not going to get rid of COVID. We're going to have lockdowns. They're saying it might be 2 weeks in, 2 weeks out, 2 weeks in, 2 weeks out. In New York, we've done a great job. I saw there's only 24 deaths today from COVID. It's amazing. Like we did it. We flattened the hell out of that curve. But nobody's staying in the house, myself included. So we'll see where that goes. But this is not a chartable trajectory, though. We don't know what's going to come out. Some people are going to survive, stay nimble, but we have to be very prepared. I think we have to be very prepared for some tough economic times, for things to contract, for people to retrench, and people to reinvent. And I'm hearing a lot of rumors about Marvel and DC doing all kinds of things. So, there's more to come on that for sure.
When you say that agents and publishers like to see a project that's not completely done, that seems to be the consensus. I'm a big fan of Graphic Novel TK, which you sponsor through the Beat, and everybody that goes on the show seems to say the same thing, that when you're pitching an idea for your graphic novel, that the publishers want to be able to have a hand in shaping the book. So they don't want to see finished graphic novels when they get their pitches. They want to see the idea, the pitch, and then have a chance to help make sure it's as good as it can be. But that's a great segue into my next question, which we touched on already. And this is my special dead horse that I've been beating, and I'm actually writing my thesis on this. And the idea is that there are two industries. There's the comic book industry, which is direct market comic book shops, Marvel and DC and superheroes. And there's a graphic novel market, which is, Random House, Scholastic, HarperCollins, First Second, Little Brown. And these are graphic novels, the difference being the direct market, meaning the single floppy issues, 24 to 32 pages, usually adventure, science fiction, or superheroes. And then you have the graphic novel industry being put out by traditional publishers, which are, like regular books, 100, self-contained, they're not serialized. And what I've noticed is that you seem, not everybody, obviously, and everything we talked about, there will be exceptions so far. But I've noticed that you have one kind of creator who likes to do the Marvel and DC and the direct market, and one kind of creator who likes to do the graphic novels with the publishers. Do you think that's true? And what do you think is the future are for both of them? Do they have a future together, or will they stay apart?
So I do think there's definitely different career trajectories, but I think it's like double dipping, I think it's like people buy their food, Target sells groceries, but there's also, Whole Foods. The kind of food they sell at Target is very different than the food they sell at Whole Foods, obviously, but you'll find milk and eggs in both. So, people are going to be crossing over from one to the other, but I do think a lot, like, I used to go talk to SVA's graduating class, and like a long time ago, I started 15 years ago, and at that point, they all wanted to go to Marvel or DC. And now I haven't talked to them in a while, but from talking to the grads, they all want to go to First Second. Everybody wants a deal at First Second, and or now that Gina Gagliano, who does graphic novel TK, is over at Random House, I'm sure they want to be at Random House Graphics as well. But So I don't think it's all connected. And I think you're going to see the comic shops that survive are going to be the ones that are selling books, you know? I mean, I think we're going to see the periodical. I think there will be periodicals. I have to be careful because, you know, the periodical is profitable. Comics publishers, Marvel and DC, Image, everyone who puts out, they wouldn't put out periodicals if they weren't profitable. So, I mean, we're looking at some changes to the system that are shaking things up, but there seems to be a big love of that format, the 32-page comics periodical. So I think it's going to stick around, but I think you're going to see it become less, I think you're going to see it become more of a hobbyist kind of item. I think it kind of already is a hobbyist item. I mean, everybody's like, well, we need to get comics for kids. It's like, we have comics for kids. They're called Dogman and Guts and Investigators. You know, it's like, I guarantee you, you know, I call this the put the child in the room test. It's like, you know, put the child in the room with copy of Investigators, you know, or a Superman comic book that's, you know, the way they are now with the decompressed storytelling and everything. I mean, obviously one is aimed at children, but kids want to get a satisfying story. They want to get a satisfying chunk. Another thing I talk about all the time, you know, they're going to want the book that gives them some satisfaction, you know. Now, I know some children who collect periodicals, okay? Or young people, like you know, teenagers, let's say, and so it's not impossible that they collected. One friend of mine has well, he's 13 now, but when he was 11 years old, he collected Simpsons comics, and now he's graduated to getting Marvel and DC comics. Okay, now there are no more Simpson comics, so that method of him to get into the habit is gone. So I think you need to have. I know I'm rambling all around and not really answering your question, but it's you know, I just don't think it's going to be one or the other. I think stores are going to diversify into selling a lot of graphic novels because you have products that are immensely popular, like Dogman and Raina's books and Big Nate. All these books are very popular, and I'm seeing more and more comic shops carry them. So I don't think the two streams are going to be. I think that, you know, there's a lot of different career paths, but I don't think the two markets are going to be quite as different as we might think. I think the comic shops that survive this disruption are going to be a lot like indie bookstores, and they're already moving. They're like pop culture indie bookstores. You're muted, Ramon. Unmute.
Sorry. So you know that I have a few more questions, but I'd actually like to open it up to the audience to see if they have any questions they'd like to ask you. If you do have a question, just unmute yourself and speak up.
Well, I was just wondering, well, it sounds like for comics, the market's really just for people under 18, or there's nothing, that's what I got the impression, but I don't know if that's true. Would you say that's true?
So I think it's a large market, you know, kids love comics. I mean, this is once a controversial statement in the industry, but now it's more accepted that kids love comics. They buy millions of comics in graphic novel format. But no, absolutely not. There's still grown-up comics, and you know, I mean, if you could see, if I didn't have this fake background behind me, you would see just stacks and stacks and stacks of books behind me, because that's what my entire apartment is made out of, is graphic novels. And you know, there's lots of books coming out. I mean, from Image and Vault and IDW and you know, smaller publishers. So there's absolutely room for comics that are aimed at out of kids who are out of school.
Anybody else have a question?
I guess I had a.
Oh, go ahead, Kingsley. Go ahead, Kingsley.
Thank you. Like the last statement that I had in the chat, more or less, was versus manga style. That's all. Like, what's your comment on that?
Well, yeah, I think manga style is it's kind of a very, it's like, you know, it's like K-pop. it's like you have to be very authentic, you know? Like I know there's absolutely crossover there. Like Svetlana Chimkova is an artist who's been very successful with the manga style. But most kids who are manga fans, I say kids, it's read by all ages. Most people who are, yeah, right, you know, but you like the Japanese stuff, you know, it's hard to not be of that culture and to make stuff that's authentic, I think. So I think it's harder to cross over. However, it can be done. Like Svetlana or Adam Warren, you know, he's been at it forever. But yeah, there are some artists that break through with a manga-like style. It's just don't ever expect to get it sold in Japan because, you know, that they won't take it there.
Somebody else had a
Thank
question
you very,
besides Kingsley?
thank you very
Yes.
much for answering. Thank you. Thank you.
Of course, thank you for the question. It's a good question. Very good.
Yes, I had a question in regards to as a writer, I'm primarily a writer, and most of the art that I've had done for most of my comics, I've outsourced them to separate other countries because it's been much cheaper for me to do that. And the quality has been pretty exceptional. My question is this. In regards to comic book production that you think going forward with post-COVID life, as it were, do you believe that outsourcing would still be continuously the trend instead of hiring artists that are in the States? Or do you think that would be or do you think it will be shifting more to any direction, or do you think one will be better than the other?
So I think the reality is you've discovered yourself. It's like if you go to any other country that has a comics culture at all, you're going to find incredible artists. And I mean, without talking about the standard of living or the negative connotations of the word outsourcing, yeah, it's like a lot of the places that they come from do have a standard of living that is, an economic scale that's a bit lower. So yes, it's cheaper. But yeah, it's not, you're going to find amazing artists all over the world, like people love to draw comics. So I don't, I think that's fine. I think this is a worldwide culture. It's a worldwide art form. And I think, I mean, for me personally, the more people come together and connect from different cultures, I think the stronger it is. There's been some kind of like higher level talk about how in this we're seeing a world style of comics. I think you see a lot more European comic styles come to the United States. Certainly manga is a lot more available, and American comics have definitely very much influenced European comics and Japanese comics, although it's not as easy to see. And I mean, it's kind of called the world style, and you do see, Tumblr a few years ago, but in a lot of the comics for younger artists, you're seeing this very, might have European coloring, but manga-like character designs and a Western style plot. I mean, that's pretty common, to be honest, to see all those influences kind of coming together. So I think we're going to continue to see people, the internet brings people together. So I think we'll continue to see people from different countries collaborating to make great comics. I want to say one thing. I keep saying this is my one prediction for COVID, is that we will see more animation. And I am hearing that a little bit, like, some people are using animation more for advertising or, for titles, that kind of thing, because animation can be done remotely. You don't need to have people in the same room to do animation, whereas filmed entertainment, you do. So I would not be surprised to see kind of a boom in animation and maybe homegrown animation too, because again, it's something that, like we're looking at a Zoom now. I mean, I think before COVID, the idea of Zooming with people, was more like something you did for the business meeting. Now they're doing it on CNN. So it's like, and it's not much, the quality sometimes not much, higher than what we're doing right now on major networks, So, I think people are eager for distraction, for entertainment, and like the standards in animation doesn't necessarily have to be like, you know, Disney or Miyazaki. I think we're going to see some more handcrafted, you know, ground level kind of just guerrilla animation catch on that you can do now. But I think people are just, you know, going to be a little more open to it. So, because it's still time consuming, but it can, like I said, it can be done remotely.
Thank you, Heidi.
That's great insight, Heidi. I never thought about that, but that makes complete sense. Two people had this question about agents. The question is, how do you get an agent, and do you need different agents for the direct market and for the book publishing industry?
Well, book publishing industry, agent is like you can't get very far without an agent. Whereas in the comics industry, you kind of are looked at askance if you have an agent. I wouldn't recommend getting different agents, but I think in the comics industry, they're coming a little bit more accepting of the fact that you have that people have agents. But you might not need them. I mean, we might see more agents become involved in Marvel and DC. But I mean, for now, it's sort of like you bypass the agent because it's like, you know, I'm sure Scott Snyder has a book agent, for instance, because that's where he got to start, was writing prose. But I doubt that the agent gets too involved when he goes, you know, to get his page rate on detective, you know. So plus they get royalties also, and both channels are royalties. You know, on my website, I don't know if I can show this. If you go to the Beat, yeah, it's hard to see. Anyway, if you go to the Beat on the front page, there's a how to break into comics and stay there once you get there, which is really the key, as Ramon said. Survive once you get there. So if you go there, it's a resource page. I haven't updated it in a while, but I do update it all the time. How do I get an agent? There are some links there on how to get agents. There are about a dozen agents that I know of who are respected, who deal with graphic novels. So we're talking about a real funnel for material, okay? Like getting an agent is absolutely the hardest of all of this because there's so few reputable agents. However, I think publishers are, I mean, but pre-COVID, it was like, the sky's the limit, you know, gotta come on down, we need material. And so, I mean, part of it is going to be more competitive, yes. But to get an agent, I would look at the list of agents. Like I said, there's not that many who specialize or are really knowledgeable about graphic novels. You gotta send in your pitch and gotta hope. So sometimes before getting an agent, again, building your reputation. You might want to self-publish something, or you might want to get relevant experience as an editor or as assistant editor, writing for a website. You know, my, I don't know if they've announced it, so I shouldn't say, but, you know, one of my frequent collaborators at the Beat is someone who was not really in, I mean, he did, you know, he was dabbling, he did podcasts and, you know, studied art. And he came and worked for the Beat for a few years for me, and you know, he has a book deal now. I mean, he's an industry fixture, let me put it that way. I'm sure he would have become an industry fixture no matter what, but I mean, I do think working for the Beat, he got to meet all the relevant people that he needed to meet, and you know, it definitely didn't hold him back. I would say writing about comics is actually a good way. In fact, I think you might have one of my other writers on the call. Yes, I see Greg. A shout out to Greg Silver, who I met at one of Ramon's get-togethers, and we connected. Yeah, hey Greg, and now he's a regular. I don't know what we'd do without Greg. He's such a great contributor, and yeah. So, and you know, I mean, I think you're, you know, at least writing about comics, you're moving up in the world a little. So.
I just want to add one quick thing to what Heidi said. It's true that there is sort of a small number of agents who have been doing graphic novels for a while and are very experienced, but as more and more publishers and more editors are acquiring graphic novels, there are more agents who are doing it too. One resource that I would recommend for people who are looking to get into kids' graphic novels specifically is Publishers Weekly's Children's Bookshelf newsletter, which comes out twice a week, and at the end it has a list of deals from the week. So, you know, in every single newsletter, there's an announcement of at least one graphic novel deal, and it'll tell you the editor that it went to, the publisher it went to, and the agent who sold it. So that's a way of kind of tracking which agents are making moves in the kids graphic novel space.
Yeah.
I also posted a link to the graphic novel TK episode that talks about agents.
Yeah.
That was a very in-depth interview. I can't remember who the agent was. And we've had Susan Graham here on the workshop, and I will be posting most of the recordings we've had for the last 2 years sometime soon, and she'll be on there.
Also, if I may gently plug something I wrote recently, I interviewed an agent named Jana Morishima recently. She is teaching a class called Kids Comics Intensive. The enrollment period for that has now passed, but she does have a group, an online group called Kids Comics Unite, that's more of like kind of a loosely structured community kind of thing. So if you're serious about getting into kids comics and want to talk to people about the ins and outs of that industry, that is something that's probably worth looking into.
You know, I'll say Jana is a tremendous resource. She's a really great person. And in fact, I'm so glad you did that interview, because I talked to her about writing a column for The Beat, and she actually wrote one, and then I kept kicking it back to her. And anyway, so the fact we finally got Jana onto The Beat, thanks to Greg, was really great. But she's absolutely fantastic. I love her so much. And Jonah, I got to call out, you know, we've been Zooming for 3 months. Everybody I've seen's got a chat cat now. Like, I have mine, but they're hiding. You got a chat kitten. And oh my God, wow. I'm so jealous.
I have 2 kittens, and they have been here since Saturday, and they've been napping all day, but now they're full of energy and they're like chasing each other all over the office. So yeah, I guess if you're just like stuck inside for months, it's a good time to take care of some animals.
Absolutely. Enjoy those precious moments. They don't return.
Any other questions, guys?
I actually had a question for Heidi. That I realize I could just ask Heidi this any time, but I think this is relevant to the group. You know, we've been talking a lot about pre and post COVID, how the industry goes. A lot of creators, artists especially, but writers too, really base a lot of their planning, if not, I don't think it's too bold to say, their income around cons and con season.
Oh, yeah.
So post-COVID, what do you think creators need to be aware of in terms of looking to cons as a potential source of connection?
Yeah, I'm actually writing an article for Publishers Weekly talking about that. I just actually started talking to people about it, and it's actually a really great question, because I don't think it's been addressed at all. Like, we've definitely talked about retailers and their issues, you know, publishers and their issues, but you know, the loss of income from cons is, you know, that's tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars to an entire economy of vendors, creators, publishers. You know, it's a huge loss. So, I mean, people I'm talking to, you know, they're on the web. They have got their web stores. And, you know, people have really adapted. They have Instagram sales now and tutorials, and everybody's doing, you know, Facebook live chats. And so I think it's just as important you got to just hustle. You know, it's like, I mean, I know I am like, you know, I don't know if anybody's watching the Undertaker series on WWE channel, but you know, it's like after WrestleMania, every year you go get surgery and then, you know, rest up, and then, so that's kind of how I feel right now for taking a year off of cons. Like, oh, I'm healing, I'm getting healthy, I'm not in this, you know, like constant hubbub of lugging my suitcase behind me. And you know, I've talked to a couple of other people who are, you know, not enjoying the time at home, but they're using it to do those rainy day projects. So I think you gotta hustle, you gotta keep your brand going, and we're going to see a whole new economy on the internet kind of arise, I think. So, but yeah, that's huge thing going forward. Absolutely huge. You know, cons are not coming back anytime soon.
Anybody else?
Yeah, what would you call, I mean, it's probably a dumb question, but I know there's the graphic novel market and there's like the superhero type comic market. Well, what would you call, like, say, Strange Planet, where it's kind of like just a bunch of comic strips published in a book form, but
Oh,
it's not, what would you call them?
that like Garfield, you know,
Well, not Garfield, but
you know, that book is like amazing. I mean, that guy before, he did like this book of like how to be a New Yorker. Like he had done these little comic strips, and the fact that, I mean, it sold so well for so long, such a huge bestseller. You know, people have always loved funny comics. You know, like back in the, you know, what always cracked me up is back in the day of like the 80s. People are like, how can we get more comics respected? How can we get comics respected? You know, on the bestseller list, the New York Times used to have these different bestsellers, and in that time on the bestseller list every week would be Garfield books, Calvin and Hobbes, Doonesbury, all these comics books, all these comic strip collections sold millions and millions of copies. In fact, they took over the Far Side. There's another one. They took over that bestseller list so much that the New York Times did away with it because they didn't want to have just Garfield and the Far Side on it week after week after week. So, you know, Strange Planet, I mean, people want to get a book that makes them chuckle, you know? I mean, it doesn't look like much. I know that, but there's a lot, you know, Instagram comics are huge. This is a huge, I mean, I have always been like, you know, I should write an article about this, but I haven't. But, you know, like another way to get a book deal is do your comic on Instagram and get like, you know, 5 million followers. You'll get a book deal like that, you know? And I mean, there's a lot of humorous, just observational, personal humor, personal experience, just with a twist, that are put up on Instagram, and they're immensely successful. So, you know, that's another way. But yeah, you know, pretty simple. You know, I have in my entire career, I've always fought for two things. Because I read superhero comics, but then I stopped reading them at a certain age, and then I moved on. But two things I've had to fight for all my life. It's like kids like comics and people like funny comics. And those are often controversial statements. Not anymore, but they were at one point. So.
Okay, we're at the hour mark, so I'm going to ask one last question, unless you really want to stay. What would you like to see? What are the most ideal changes you would like to see in the industry?
Yeah, so, you know, it's been a rough day in comics because, you know, we saw some members of the community are being, and we're just getting started, but, you know, they're outing some people who are pretty, you know, in some cases beloved creators, and it turns out that they have some, you know, past that aren't great. So, you know, I'd like to see, I don't think that's a comics thing. I really just think that's a societal thing. I just think, you know, that I mean, I've worked in other industries and seen it worse, to be honest. But, you know, I think we need to really protect the vulnerable in our industry. And, you know, which is a societal change is huge. I mean, obviously, we need more. I mean, you know, a few weeks ago we were talking about representation. You know, now we're talking about Black Lives Matter because it's like we brought it back to, you know, like matter of life or death, which is really the core group, so core meeting. So, but you know, along with supporting Black Lives Matter, we really, you know, more representation, more voices, more editorial. I mean, I would be really great to see more diversity on the editorial staffs of comics companies. And I mean, it's really, there's probably been in the history of comics, like probably at the fingers of two hands, Black editors, you know, that you could count. And that's in the entire history of comics. And that's really, awful. So we need more. We need more representation in that way. So, I mean, those are the things I just would like to see. I think, comics are aspirational. Jay edited and talks about this. It's an aspirational vocation, so people are willing to pull up with an awful lot to be in the industry. And you know what? It's competitive too, so I understand that. We should, we should try to just treat each other just a little bit more fairly and with equality. And other than that, very, other than that more philosophical hope for all of us, I would hope that we do see comic shops become pop culture indie bookstores, and that becomes a model that is successful and profitable and fun for the people who run the shops and the people who go into the shops. Because I mean, we all know our comic shop is, I mean, I don't go to my comic shop to buy comics. I go to hang out, and I miss JHU. It's right up the street from where I live. I wish it was open so I could go shoot the breeze with Nick and Ron. So I mean, it's a very important social nexus with the comic shops, and that's really priceless. And you know what? If there's one thing we've learned from the last 3 months, is that hanging out with other people is really fun, and it's something we all miss. I'm gonna look. I just wanted to look at some of the other questions though, because I know other people had comments. I just want to see if there's anything here that I wanted to address, because I know you guys have had, it's a smart group, and you guys have had some really good questions. Jennifer asked about balancing doing comics with other things, and I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, like indie, like there's, I used to say there was 5 fingers of comics. There was like mainstream big 2 superhero comics. There was image type comics. There was indie literary comics like Drawn and Quarterly and Fantagraphics, and there was manga, and there was web comics. So, but indie comics like you see at Small Press Expo or TCAF, I mean, these are very small. These are not a way to get rich at all. Like Chris Ware and Linda Barry got rich doing it, but there's only room for one. But I got a spouse with a good job and health, and it's really kind of the way most people who do indie comics, I hate to say it, but having a spouse who does that is definitely the way to go on that. And Jonah, you posted that spreadsheet. I will be studying that with a magnifying glass when I get off of that. And let's see, so anyway, yeah, some good questions. I think we pretty much covered them all. So yeah, but good questions, very good questions. Ramon, unmute.
I'm sorry. I keep muting because the quality goes down when my mic is on.
You gotta get your Jake Tapper face. Like Jake Tapper, my hero.
No? What's that?
Oh man, he's a cartoonist. Actually, he's always like plugging comics. He's CNN. He's always plugging comics on his Twitter feed.
Anyways, I copied down the entire chat feed, and I'm going to actually try to answer these questions in an email that I'll send to everybody. And so hopefully everybody here, which is on the meetup list, so you get that email. If not, just email me back. I think most of you guys have my email or know how to contact me. We do have a Facebook group as well as a meetup page. And I would very much, and before everybody goes, I do have some announcements, so don't take off just yet. Okay. I'd like to thank Heidi for coming out.
Well, it's a pleasure. Thank you for finally having me, Ramon. And
I've been saving you.
I really, appreciate, and again, networking. I've met some great people through your club, or your group. So it's a wonderful thing.
And we are always honored when you come to one of our events. So, and you and I have to go out and get
We
Filipino.
do.
And
So, yeah, I can't wait till there are events, first off. That would be the best, happiest day of my life. And yeah, when you and I can just go out and eat some, chicken adobo, that'll be like, wow,
awesome.
nice.
Awesome. As soon as it's open, we're going. It's set. Feel free to stay for the announcements really quickly. October 16th is going to be Diversity Comic Con at FIT. Now, I've been told to submit a proposal for a virtual Comic Con. So if anybody has any ideas, let me know. And I will be contacting that list of people you sent me, Heidi, for people who could be on the board of advisors. I've already contacted most of them, and most of them have said yes, but that was pre-COVID. So I will be contacting them again to see if they'd like to, be one of the advisors to the planning committee. The other thing is that, as I mentioned in the beginning, July 7th, we're having J.D. Rosario, who's a publisher of Unstoppable Comics. This guy is prolific. This guy is putting something out all the time, and he's a great guy to have as a guest, especially when it comes to not just self-publishing, but kickstarting your comics. The last announcement I want to make is that, actually, you know what? Gamal, you have something. You have an event, right? Did it happen already, or are you still doing it?
Hey, Ramon, how you doing? Actually, the event didn't happen yet. It's going to happen next Thursday. We're going to be doing a webinar on the comic book marketing, specifically digital marketing for comics. It's going to be a free webinar that's happening through a company called Global Comics. It's going to happen next Thursday at 8 p.m. And Ramon, I think you already signed up, so you have the link. So if you want to share the link with everybody, I
will do that.
Right, but I've actually posted it on the Comics Arts Workshop Facebook group. But
you actually post it on the chat, because I don't have, I'd have to find it.
Let me see. Hold on. I will post it on the chat. Hold on one second.
And while Gamal is doing that, let me just make my last announcement. Well, it's not the last announcement, actually. It's sort of an announcement. I'm teaching a character design class at FIT this summer, but you guys can't sign up because it's for high school people. So unless you're in high school, you can't join. But however, the other real announcement is this. The reason why I chose this topic for this particular meetup, and why I'm also bringing in JD next month, is because in July, I am launching an actual course on how to produce comics on a regular basis. The thing is that there's a lot of courses out there on how to draw comics, maybe a few how to write. There's Comics Experience. There's the Sequential Artist Workshop down in, I think it's Florida, But what I've noticed is that there's a bunch of people who are like me, who are, much further along in our careers or are at our midlife. And we're not really looking to be young guns and work at Marvel and DC and draw Batman. We just sort of want to make comics for our own pleasure, for our own legacy or whatever. And that's what this course that I'm designing is geared towards. People who just want to put something out for their own, for their own satisfaction, for their own, we're not trying to break into the industry as much as we're just trying to make our passion come true. And that's what this course is for. It's about for people who just want to make comics, not necessarily, get that image deal or get that, even though that would be nice and that's still possible, but the focus will be on just producing. And that's what this course is. And so that's why I'm choosing topics that sort of relate to that. And I'm going to be announcing it on the meetup email, as well as on the Facebook group and my regular newsletter email. So I just want you guys to be aware that will be happening in July. It'll probably be like 5 weeks, and it will involve a lot of Zoom sessions with each other. Okay? So I guess that's it. So Gamal, you posted that link on the thing already? Again, I'd like to thank Heidi MacDonald, and if anybody wants to stay and just chat, feel free. Okay. Nice round of applause for Heidi again. Thank you very much. Heidi, thank you, thank you, thank you.
As soon as I take my hand off the cat, he like crawls all over my desk. So I think he might want food, but I'll be back to chat with everybody in a minute.
You know what would be great, and this is what I have to figure out for Diversity Comic Con if it's going to be virtual. How do you network in a Zoom session? And the only way I can think of is that if you actually just do a quick introduction of who you are and what you do in regards to comics. So let's go through if you're willing, if you want to do it, and if you don't have to, but I will call out some names of people who are on the participants list. So Andre, we'd love to hear really quickly what you do.
Of course, of course. Hello, everyone. I'm Andre Daniels. Usually I go by Dre or The Brute. It's usually the moniker I go by. I'm a comic writer, editor, and direction. I've been writing comics since 2006, but finally started publishing actually last year. I wrote a series called Treble, The Rhythm Within, part 1 through 8. I'm currently, I published 2 of them so far, self-published 2 of them. And I plan on, once it's all said and done, making it into a novelization and doing some other cool stuff with it. But yeah, but ultimately, my writing style, I'm pretty loose, and I love comedic and action. Um, fun-loving, pretty much. I just like to really have a good time.
Thanks, Andre. One thing I want people to add when they introduce themselves is what resource could you really use right now? What do you need help with? And I don't expect people to respond on Zoom, but we are all on Meetup, I presume. And so if there's something you can help somebody else with, contact them on the Meetup page, okay? Just, you can message them, click on the, just make a note of who they are and find them on the Meetup page. So let's see, Kat, tell us a little bit about yourself. Okay, Kat, okay, maybe not. Kat? EJ Barnes.
Hear me? Hi, I'm EJ Barnes. I'm a Boston area comics writer and illustrator. I work in a variety of media, including watercolor and scratchboard. And I've also been doing a fair amount of political cartooning lately, although since I'm no longer affiliated with a newspaper and I don't have a syndicate, I don't know where to send these.
Kat, EJ, I will, we do know an editor over at King Features. I'll try to get you her name unless you already know her. Hello, I'm assuming that's Chris. Chris? Hello? Hello?
Yes. Hey. Can you hear me?
Is this Chris?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey. So I do some art management, manage some artists. Also, can just give people pointers on from the artist perspective on some of the things that they can do to shore up their portfolio. When submitting to editors or meeting editors, stuff like that. So I'd be more than happy to talk about that kind of stuff.
Chris has been one of our guests in the past. He's a great person to contact. He, I guess you could say he's an agent for the direct market. So, Glenn, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Glenn? Unmute?
Yeah, hey. Oh.
You're on mute.
Wait,
Go ahead.
how about
Go
now?
ahead.
Okay. All right, well, let's see. I am professionally a graphic designer and I do production work. I've done production work for various manga companies,
Manga
including
is
now.
Japanese
Um,
anime.
right now, I've worked with Ramon in the past. I did an entry for his first anthology project, and then that got me into doing my own 24-page story, which is hosted on my website. And I'm writing up and drawing an epilogue for that right now. So, been putting it off for a couple of weeks / months, but I'm hoping to finish that. And I've started writing the next installment of that. So I don't know when it's gonna get out, but we're gonna get.
Mom?
Yes.
Hi, it's Kat.
Hi, Kat.
Catherine Grunwald. Hi. I just wanted to tell everybody that I'm doing the Mark Grunwald comic book challenge contest, and if anybody wants to be a judge, that probably in August we are going to have 1,000 submissions for the contest. So I could use some judges, like Glenn would be great. Heidi, I would love Heidi. Anybody else who wants to come on board. We're giving really good prizes. Publishing their books with one of my friends who's a publisher, and giving a few drones out. One of my friends has a drone company, so we're giving drones and instructions, and just really, really good prizes. But I need some really great judges, Ramon.
Okay. Yeah. I have the link, actually. I will send that out when I send out that email answering these questions.
Thanks, okay? Ramon.
Thanks for coming out.
Yeah.
Graham.
Hello, my name's Graham. I live in Chicago, Illinois, actually, just kind of of the Heidi talk. Been following the beat for a while. But I just started writing and drawing comics about 2 years ago, so kind of new to it, kind of trying to learn a little bit more about the craft and the scene. So I'm got a comedy series I do called Two Peas in a Pod. It's about two women who live in a shipping container, kind of topical for quarantine. And then I do some other stories that I'd like to call magic product stories, which are kind of about consumer products that transform to throw characters into new worlds. So yeah.
Nice. Greg.
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah. My name's Greg. I currently, you can see a lot of my work at Heidi's site, The Beat. I've also got bylines in places like the Daily Dot and Shelf Dust and a couple of others. I don't know. I'm in a lot of places, but I also write my own comics. And I even edited one of Ramon's anthologies, the Sci-Fi's 2019 anthology, which is a really fun science fiction project. And so yeah, I write by kind of more corporate stuff, sometimes by day, but my real passion is what I do on nights and weekends, which is comics.
Jen?
Me? Am I the only Jen?
Jen, yeah.
Hi, sorry, I guess, hold on. I don't know the best way to, maybe this is better. Hi, I am primarily an art teacher by trade, illustrator, sort of getting into comics, probably more independent-ish. I have been writing and doing my own stuff. I have a couple projects on hold right now, and I'm probably more interested in independent publishing. We'll see.
Let's see. Jonah.
I'm a very difficult task of trying to be an editor and a cartoonist at the same time. So my day job is at Scholastic, working on graphic novels and picture books. More graphic novels recently, which is very exciting. I actually work on Dog Man, which Heidi mentioned. And then I also write and draw comics. Currently, I'm working on a graphic novel that I sold to Little Brown in February. So that won't be coming out for a few years, but that is in the works. I've also tabled at local shows, made some short comics, put them online and printed them as minis. Definitely hard to find time for all of that, but it's really great. I'm having a fun time and I'm very passionate about comics. So it's the life that I wouldn't have it any other way.
Josh, why don't you tell us about yourself?
Hello, everyone. My name is Josh. I was also involved with Ramon's anthology, so I had a comic on that. But I write and draw comics. My goal is just to work on this one shot that I've been working on for a while. Just been rewriting the story, getting the script, getting feedback, and all that stuff. So that's coming together, and that's what I'm working on.
Thanks, Josh. Kingsley?
Hello, everyone. My name is Kingsley Cross. Initially, I'm just coming into the industry, or more or less like I'm still just sketching, going through sketches. I'm looking to go from regular sketch to line work to color, and even as you see the shadows and in this perspective, just to go through perspective and shadows and what have you, the lighting and everything. So I'm still like kind of sort of like a student. I'm kind of in a mix with web development, even kind of trying to mix the best of both worlds. From, let's say, from STEM to STEAM, where you're adding in the art in programming per se, or even web development, as I'm focused on. I think that's about it. I'm just my first time in this chat in that perspective. Also, what caught my interest was the fact that you guys are talking about comic books all together, and sort of been looking through in that sense, even with Stan Lee's comic book, infamous book that he had, that How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, and all that other good stuff right there. Stay sketching again. So every day the sketching and trying to get to the next level line work and the color and shadows, and even writing. I write in my journal. So trying to, and ultimately the creative side of me just to come out into that art.
Kingsley, where are you based
per
on?
se, you know. I'm in Brooklyn, New York.
Okay, Nee?
Yeah. And it's like, say again?
No, I'm asking the next person to talk.
Hey.
Nee.
Hey guys. I'm Nee. I'm very new here. Ramon and I chatted quickly through mutual connection. I'm a creative director by trade, and I work exclusively with startups. And I'm very new to this comic book graphic novel situation. It was a long time hobby of mine, and a favorite author has always been Neil Gaiman. And so I thought, with this COVID time, it was due time to kind of get started on this passion. And recently I have started co-creating and producing a animated TV series based out of Denmark with a really fun group of guys that I met online, of course. It's called Roaches, and it's a parody of social economic situation that we're in now. So if you like Rick and Morty, Futurama, that sort of stuff, then you'll have an idea of what Roaches is. Yeah.
Thanks, Nee. Rick? Rick, you're muted.
I just started an Instagram page like 2 months ago. That's about it. I mean, I was a production manager but I got furloughed, so I was like, oh, I'll try doing comics. So that's basically, I mean, they're like more like just trying to be funny or whatever type of comics. They're not like, graphic novel or anything like that. So
Thanks, Rick. Last person I think is Michael Wells.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Ramon. I 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. I'm a cubicle peon for a massive corporation in New York. I'm based out of Brooklyn, and I've been a supposed slash sometimes slash aspiring prose short fiction writer. For quite a few years, I've had a few things published. About a year ago, it occurred to me that I didn't just have to fantasize about writing comics. I might actually be able to try doing it in addition. So I'm getting started on that. Actually, what I should mention here, what got me started with that is the Brooklyn Speculative Fiction Writers Meetup Group. And about a year ago, they launched a comics writing subgroup. And there's definitely room for more people if anyone's interested in that. Daniel Stalter leads that group, and he's also a member of Comics Workshop, which is how I found out about you guys. So definitely people welcome to come join that group as well. And I'm working on a couple projects now. One is very small things, one with a couple different artist friends. One we started after college about 25 years ago and fell by the wayside for over a decade, and we've picked it up recently. And the 13-page horror piece that we're hoping, that I and another friend are hoping to get into an anthology next month. We've got about 3 weeks till the deadline, so I should probably be working on that now instead of being here, but fingers crossed.
Thanks, Michael. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. I think that's everybody. Did we miss anyone? We got everybody? Anyway, thank you all for coming out tonight. I myself, if you haven't figured out already, I teach at FIT. I teach web design and marketing and comics, a lot of different things. And I organize our Comic-Con over there, and I organize this group as well. And I have published a few books. But yeah, I just really like bringing people together to do these things, and I do like teaching. So like I said, July 7th, we have JD Rosario. And if anybody has any ideas on how to do a con virtually, please let me know. So I've never done it. I tried to attend one this past week, and it was mostly Zoom sessions, but I feel like it could be more. Okay, guys, thank you so much. And you will be getting an email from me where I try to answer some of the other questions that were on the chat. Okay. Welcome to Comic Arts Workshop, and good night, everybody.
All right, everyone, have a good evening.
Thanks.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Thanks, Ramon.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Ramon, this was awesome.
Good night. Thanks so much.
Sure thing.
Thank you, Heidi.
Take care.